Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Ankerstar Wealth Morning Show. We have all kinds of exciting topics for this morning. Of course, the headline that just flashed across, we're what, 10 or 11 days from the assassination attempt. So Director Cheadle of the Secret Service has resigned. That was kind of, goodbye, good riddance, right? Tough spot, obviously, when you're in a position like that. But goodness gracious, has been amazing to watch, not only real time with the stuff we knew that day, but now with the congressional testimonies, and it kind of reinvigorated my belief in Congress people, because man, there were some people going after her, which was pretty impressive to watch. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. That's just a headline that got me all excited, because it's good to see that things are getting right sized in government, or at least on a better path, if you will. But what we are going to talk about is it is a big day in the crypto world, because Ethereum ETFs are now trading. So a little bit of history. Again, we had at the beginning of the year, January 1st, there were no crypto ETFs. Then, mid-January 11th, I believe. I used to know that date offhand because it's such a big deal. We started trading Bitcoin ETFs. Now we're trading Ethereum ETFs. I'm just going to kind of talk to that a little bit about what's going on there and if we're participating or not. Secondly, Mike is going to talk about something that is really starting to gain a lot of interest with the potential for, we talked yesterday about couple of rate cuts. I keep saying hikes I have to try not to say hikes since we've been doing so much of that, but rate cuts coming maybe at the end of the year, we'll see, but certainly into 2025. So that kind of whole housing market is kind of going to get a lot more play as folks look to, how do I play it? Do I buy now, pay less, but then refinance? Do I wait for home prices to go up? Anyhow, there were certainly some numbers coming out this morning with home sales from June. Mike's going to kind of dig into that. He's going to tell you what the press is saying and kind of his opinion on it, so you can make your own decisions there. And then our last topic is General Motors. We do talk about EVs a lot. They had earnings this morning. They beat earnings, so you would think the stock is up. It is not. It's down. Mike's going to talk to a little bit as to why, and it does involve EV sales. Before we get started, this financial education presentation. You have to do your own due diligence for acting upon anything you hear in this presentation. More disclaimer information is available at ankerstarwealth.com, and the opinions expressed are Mike and mine alone. Let's take a look at the market real time. Here we are, kind of flattish for what's going on, but when you click over to the crypto space, which is right here, see crypto in the red for the big three. I know not everybody's a real expert, but if you can kind of think of the hierarchy of crypto, you kind of have Bitcoin as the kind of main, if you will, or at least the most popular. And they all do different things, right? So we're not trying to compare them, but you kind of have Bitcoin, you have Ethereum, which is actually Ethereum, if you say it correctly, which I don't. And then you have Ripple, and then kind of on into some others there. So really, this is, the sea change is now that, Bitcoin is unique in the fact it's limited number. You could go into the whole Bitcoin theory, but with, Ethereum, it's interesting because it's a software and it has a usage application, and now it's trading in an ETF. So I know personally in my accounts, I'm staying away from it. I think most of the advisors are, except for maybe a little nibble across the board. But yeah, we're not moving in wholesale. You're not going to see it in your models. And when you look at the comparison today of Bitcoin and Ethereum, Bitcoin, the ETFs are selling off as the Bitcoin, as the Ethereum ETFs open up. Again, I just think that's normal money flow. If there was a Coke ETF and a Pepsi ETF opened up, you're going to see funds flow across. So I really don't think it has anything to do with Bitcoin itself. Just as promising as ever. But since the charts are kind of all messed up for the new ETF, since it's day one, I'm pulling this from CoinDesk, which is how I watch Bitcoin on the weekend, if you will. But this is the Ethereum chart, if you will. It's a 1 minute, so you kind of had earlier in the day when they started trading. These are off Zulu times. Earlier in the day, it started trading, initially went down, and then it's kind of coming back up. So if you remember, though, the Bitcoin ETFs were so widely anticipated. People thought that as money flows in, that it would skyrocket. Well, remember, there's two sides to every trade, right? So there's a buyer and a seller. So certainly money did flow into the ETFs, but the it took a couple weeks before the price to actually start going up of Bitcoin as new buyers are hopping in and buying. So so I don't anticipate seeing a big move in the Ethereum ETFs, even though it does make it more accessible to folks out there. So that's all I'm going to cover on that. I'll stop sharing. Mike, over to you to talk about some home stuff.
Yes. So saw this article this morning. Thought it was interesting that it kind of makes it sound negative. June home sales slump. There's their headline. Oh, clickbait. Pointing to a buyer's market as supply increases. In buyer's market, that sounds like a good thing, right? We want people that are
Right.
buying homes. I get it if you're selling your home, but when you really read into the data, I think it's interesting. Sales of previously owned homes dropped 5.4%. So there's less transactions, but the inventory went up and the median price went up by 4%. So obviously for the Fed to do rate cuts, they have to make sure that inflation is in check. And the primary driver of inflation, about 60% of the drive of inflation, is either homes or renting homes, basically home ownership. So as we see, inventory starting to go up, we know what that means. Eventually people are going to have to lower the prices they sell it so they can actually get it sold. That will in turn lower the prices and should help inflation subside further, and then the Fed can do the rate cuts that Steve spoke about yesterday. So I see this as a good thing. Now, when you take a look though, when is it time to buy a home? And there's two, key factors in figuring the payment of your house: what you paid for it and the interest rate that you got from the bank. Those are the two things. What you paid for it is not negotiable later on. You can't go back a year later and say, I want to pay less. It is what it is. But the good thing is the interest rate you can refinance. So, maybe that's not as great for the banks, but the bottom line is you can refinance at a lower interest rate. So when it comes to buying a home, you really are, you're looking at those two factors. When prices come down, that is the best time to buy. Don't worry too much about the interest rate. The best time to refinance is when the interest rate comes down. But, the expectation is these prices will start to either not increase or maybe even decrease a little bit, certainly in certain housing markets. So, is it a buyer's market? This one says buyer's market because the supply is up and there's more options, but I'll believe it's truly a buyer's market when the price comes down a little bit, and I won't worry too much about the interest rate at the moment. So that's one thing. Another thing is, as Steve said, General Motors, and as a former employee of General Motors back in the 90s, I worked there, I still have an interest in General Motors. But anyways, they did great in terms of earnings. Earnings before income and taxes, 15 billion, over 13 billion. So that's great. I mean, as far as their forecast, cash flow, everything looks great. All the metrics, great. But one thing, the bad news to it that caused their stock to go down is they revealed they would delay the opening of their Michigan EV truck plant by 6 months. And you got to imagine opening up a truck plant, it takes a lot of time. But then there's also, I found another article that says they plan to slow their EV plans. Now, it doesn't matter where you sit on the side of, I've got to have a combustion engine versus an electrical. I mean, they got to produce vehicles. They got to sell them at a profit. It's probably good to have both so you can sell to anybody that wants to buy something. But the bottom line is they're having some supply delays. And that is the primary reason their stock is down. Now, I have to point out, I worked at General Motors in the 90s. We had the EV1. We had an electric vehicle in the 90s. Now, when did Tesla come out with theirs? Way later. If General Motors had stuck with the EV1, and guess what? I wasn't high enough that I had any input in it other than I tracked the warranty on it. But they only leased these vehicles in California and Arizona because batteries do better in warm weather. So they were smart. They didn't lease them up in Maine or Wisconsin or something, but they only leased them. So that meant at the end of the lease, General Motors owned the vehicle, and they took them back. And there's even a movie about how they basically crushed and got rid of these cars, and they did not continue the program. And then later on, Tesla comes out with this, brand new idea of an electric vehicle, and I'm thinking, wait a second, we used to have this. Anyways, maybe some bad decisions by General Motors to get rid of that program. Tesla might not even have existed. Now EVs are in the news, and I'll tell you what, when I look at EV sales versus combustion engines, what really drives it to me, it's not as much the political side, it's the cost of gas. If we see the cost of gas start going up to $5-6 a gallon, at least in Ohio, it may already be that in some states, the higher gas prices go up, the more people want to buy an EV. When gas prices go down, they sell a lot more big trucks. So, I mean, that's what I see as driving a lot of it. But you'll certainly hear this in the political side, and I'm not sure why they gravitate to it. So anyways, that's your update on General Motors and EV plans.
All right. Well, thanks for that info, Mike. And I look at the bottom there, I see that third bullet, and I see Buick's first EV. I can't think in my mind of two things further apart than a Buick. I guess they still exist, by the way, because they say it, and an EV. So I don't know who's buying that. Anyway, I won't speculate. But good information today. So with that, we will see you guys back tomorrow. You guys have a good one. Bye.